I guess, can you hear me okay? Yeah? No, that's just great. You know, we all have our own stories. And we all have, at least, I guess it's my prayer that we do have, dreams of how our lives might be. And for me, when I was about 14, I would go and sit under this little cherry tree in the school that I was attending. And I imagined and dreamt of what this life might look like. I had all kinds of difficulties and things that I had to face at that time. More years passed, and then I remember seeing Jimi Hendrix at Woburn Abbey playing, and a whole bunch of other guys, many of them legendary within the music industry. And I felt as if I was glimpsing again a possibility of what this life might be. And then I meet these First Nations people from North America, and I plead with them pretty much, please teach me everything that I've never been taught, and the only thing that makes sense to me. How I could take my place in the story of these times and add my little bit, even though it'll never be mentioned in any kind of history book, even though most people will never notice, even though my entire life will pass by almost like a whisper in the wind that for a moment makes an impression and then is gone. Because I would like this life to count. I wish to know myself when the day comes that the hole has been dug and I'm about to flop into it, that I used the time that I had to greatest effect for those things which I truly love. And I don't forget either the crushing kind of statement that they gave me 20 years after I began learning from them. Countless ceremonies, Kiva ceremonies deep underground, the Sundance ceremony, dancing to the tree and the renewal and regeneration of the coming year, of the Inipi ceremonies, of course, Sweat Lodge, of the Bower ceremonies, of all these other ceremonies. And in the end, they say to me, Mac, you need to understand these are not your ceremonies. You were once an indigenous people in these islands. You were always a mixed race people. People from North Africa, from what we call Southeast Asia, trade routes coming through to Britain, all across what is now known as Europe. You were always a mixed race people, but your people once used to build their homes with the doorways facing the rising sun. You were earth-loving people. So now your challenge, Mac, for all that has been erased from the history books, your challenge is once again to listen to the wind, to walk in the woodlands of your land here, to sit by the streams, to stand in front of the ocean and try and feel again the songs around which once your people gathered. Your challenge is to light the home hearth fire again for any that would like to come and gather round and remember that we are a people, that you are a people, that we can be a people again. Your challenge is to ask yourself, what were the dances that we once danced, as all indigenous people have forever? For me, standing in the Sundance, in the Black Hills of North Dakota, in this iconic landscape, extraordinary landscape, and a circle of 100 dancers, all of us in these ceremonial dancing skirts, bare-chested, very, very hot sun, and the great surge and movement as the drums start and the songs begin, and the whole circle of dancers converge on the tree and then begin to step back, knowing that this is 4 days we'll be doing this. 4 days we'll be dancing to the tree, no food, no water, in our prayer dance, if you like, to this mother tree which represents our earth. How I felt in my heart when I participate in these kind of things. It's like a huge memory that I have, that this is familiar to me, and that I remember, and my heart longs and yearns for that feeling of deep connection, deep knowing, deep sense of my place. I'm speaking about this because I feel that this is what all of you are working, in some sense, in the same arena. So let me say, it was a few summers ago. I live on the edge of Dartmoor, and a few summers ago, this little group of people who I was working with, we decided we'd go out to Dartmoor to a place called Hay Tor. Maybe some of you know Hay Tor, one of the big tors, granite outcrops on Dartmoor, old volcanic places. And so in our car, we all squeezed in and we drove to Hay Tor. And the idea, we go to this very beautiful, I can't call it a mountain because it's far too small, but hilltop place. And that there we would hold a small ceremony and just offer ourselves to the unseen sort of voices around us to assist in our guiding of our work. And when we got there, Hay Tor is just covered in people. And there's litter and garbage kind of all over the place. There's an ice cream, little van flogging ice creams. There's lots and lots of people, lots of families, lots of kids. And my little team I was with were dismayed. And they were dismayed that they felt that this whole place was just being sort of unseen and screwed over. And I looked at it and I said to them, why are these people here? Why have they gathered on this hill? They could have gone anywhere. Why have they come here? There must have been several hundreds, I suppose. I said, I think they've come because they feel the same as you and I. They've come because it's beautiful. They've come because they want to rise up this hill. They want to climb those. They want to stand on top. They want to look out around. They've come with their families, with their lovers, with their friends. They've come here because they feel the mystery and the beauty and the loveliness of this hilltop site. And there they spread out and around and they sit in circles and they eat their picnics and they do their thing and they play games. We shouldn't create a separation between us and them. We are all together. We're all here. And we've come for the same reason, in the same way that a few thousand years ago people would gather. And there will be those who are holding the ceremony at the center, and many others will be trading, and kids will be playing, and babies were being born, and babies were being conceived, and all kinds of stuff would be going on. And some would be very interested in the ceremonies and others would not, but the whole feeling was we are here together as a people. And there would have been the most extraordinary sense of belonging, sense of knowing that we have a place, a feeling that there is a purpose to this, our gathering, our community. I felt for some time that the festivals that take place in this country and all over the place are a kind of remnant memory of that same thing. And that when people come and they drop their garbage, or when they come and just do all their stuff, some of it of which we love and find wonderful, some of which we'd rather not see, all the stuff is not so dissimilar to what has always been. But what has been missing somehow is the drumbeat in the center, is the ceremony, if you like, that coheres everything, makes sense of everything. The intention from the organizing group, the prayers that are somehow offered, the feeling that this is more than just a fest. It is a coming together and a recognition that we actually need each other, that there is no single unimportant person, that everybody has a place. So now yesterday, apparently we topped the 8 million mark in the world's population. Yesterday, apparently. I don't quite know how they worked that out, but apparently 8 billion was hit yesterday. And soon it'll be 9 million, and soon it'll be 10 billion, and it may well go to 11 billion. It might go close to 12 billion before the numbers begin to come down. And an enormous percentage of the babies that are born that will bring us up to those high levels are in Africa, India, other places similar, but an enormous amount in Africa. What is happening in Africa? Well, some of you will have seen on your screens what's happening in Somalia. There's a huge famine developing. Appalling pictures, which I guess we can get kind of used to until we see them again, of mothers cradling dead babies. Of the most extraordinary. In Kenya, my wife's from Kenya. In Kenya now, northern Kenya, the desert is just approaching, engulfing the land. What is the president of Kenya doing? The only thing the current president of Kenya can think of doing is to undo what the previous president did. So everything he did, whether good or bad, the new guy is just undoing, because he's got this vendetta against the old president. Can you believe it's like a baby thing, like a most extraordinary, childish kind of behavior? Meanwhile, this whole huge landmass of this vast continent may well become in itself like a killing field, because climate change is not going to stop, because that drought and the desertification and all those things will continue. We're riding hard into such extraordinary times. I don't know how anybody could imagine that it's otherwise. I don't fixate around what will be the outcome of these things. And of course, by the way, it's not only Africa, is it? It's all over, all kinds of things. But the epicenter I see in a moment for where famine and drought and all those things will happen most may well be in countries similar. I don't fixate about the end story. I think, and I consider and reflect, what is it that might bring us to our senses? This species of ours shows all the signs of being like, at a species level mentally unwell, caught up in a self-harming story. And yet there is so much that is beautiful, so much that is there to rejoice, so much that is extraordinary about the human spirit. And it's why I've gone on for a long time now saying the greatest danger we face at this time is not climate change or the nuclear threat or anything else, it's the passivity of millions of good people who choose to remain on the sidelines, making a few small alterations to their lifestyle perhaps, but never ever bringing the full weight of their creativity to the new upcoming story that is offered to us, but not yet taken. So for me, what you are doing, both in the day-to-day, year-long experience of Wake the Tiger, and in the annual celebration that is Boomtown, there is an enormous opportunity, and I hesitate to say the word, but I would say responsibility, to sing the song of opportunity that's also part of these times, to help people see what is so difficult to see, which is that we are all connected, that we all have in our hearts a desire to belong, that our strength lies in our community together, that we could waste entire lifetimes devoted to small petty things which have no meaning and no lasting virtue. Or we could choose to say that this life will matter. And irrespective of the fact that you perhaps don't feel ready, or that you don't feel fully equipped, or that you imagine that your talents are nothing very special. Or if you catch yourself in the mirror naked after you got out of the shower and you look at yourself and you sort of feel somehow less than you feel you would like to be, the person you wish to be. If you imagine that you're not quite beautiful enough, or that you're not quite strong enough, or you're not quite tall enough, or you're not quite thin enough, or plump enough, or whatever it might be, that somehow you create and feed this story that you are not as you should be. We fill lives with this stuff. But what we're asked to do, I would say, is go to a hilltop venue, as it were, at some times in the year, and walk up a little bit where you can see and feel the sky and see the moorland or the mountain or the hilltop or the fields, and quieten and listen. And in that silence, I think we will hear the voice of unborn generations yet to come, of human and more than human. We will hear the voices of all those who have gone before us, and they are pleading with us. Let this life count. Let's not throw ourselves away on the trivia of a society that really hasn't got a clue what it exists for. Let's begin a new song, a new story. So that music that was playing at the very beginning, it's a Dougie MacLean track. I went up to Scotland in 1999 at the end of December because I wanted to be up there for the year 2000, New Year. And I came across Dougie MacLean and I heard this music, and something about that music really connected with me. And that track, when I hear it and I close my eyes and I dream with it, I feel I can see riding down out of the glens this little convoy of some on horseback, some walking. I feel I can see the children running ahead and shouting and playing, and ribbons and streamers and things. I feel I can see the dreamers who are walking as a group, whose task within the community is to dream into the future, to allow these good things to happen and become real in the day-to-day. Feel I can see the warriors, men and women, whose task is there to protect the people. Feel I can see all of these, the whole array of a society of people who are coming down that valley, but it's not just here, you see. It's all around our world. There are people waking up. There are babies being born with a consciousness, I would say, that is way ahead of those normally, beginning to sort of see and feel that something is possible, but it's only going to land if we choose to take it. And I suppose I consider myself to be someone who's been given the responsibility to just pass on the invitation. And I know I'm speaking to many of you who will have maybe long time taken on that invitation. And I expect many of you have kind of taken on the invitation, but not fully. But I'm saying to you that I think, and it is my experience, that when we really, really deeply step into a space of this kind and understand that for some bizarre reason, the mystery of which is unfathomable, we have been born into this incredible, pivotal time in this human and more than human story, and that it matters how we spend these days. And I've forgotten what I shared with you guys when I was last here, but yesterday I was standing by the grave of a woman called Fiona, who was a friend of mine, and she died a few months ago and has been buried on Embercombe's land. That was her request. I want to say a little bit about her because when I first met Fiona, she was a very timid, very sort of really lacking confidence in herself, wounded and bruised after a very, very prolonged, damaging separation with her partner. No qualifications, no sense of value, all these different things. So she walked around mostly with her eyes slightly angled downwards at the ground. And I am ashamed to say that perhaps with others, I probably hardly even noticed her arrival. And something extraordinary happened over the number of years she was at Embercombe, because somehow or other she began to weave a story about herself that had real meaning for her and was nobody else's story, just hers. She claimed the space of being the one who would ensure that everybody who arrives at Embercombe is welcomed, feels that some arms have been wrapped around them and that we're glad that they've come. That she would ensure that everybody was touched and under no sense feel that they were unwelcome. And she defined this role called a host at Embercombe. And every year she grew stronger. And every year she claimed her space more and more. Until in the end she's become a little bit of a legend in our place. So when she got ill with cancer, and very badly ill, people really sort of were there, really with her, wanting her, desiring that she should live and live well. And then suddenly things took a turn, and we knew, and she knew, that she was going to die, and quite soon. Two days before she died, I went to the hospital and I just spoke to her and I said, Fee, I'd like to tell your story. Is that okay with you? And she smiled and said, I'd love that. I'd really love that. And I said, there's one other thing. I realize in all the time that I've ever known you, I've never kissed you. Could I give you a kiss? And she's beaming at tears and she said, I would be very grateful for a kiss. So I kissed her. I'm so glad that I kissed her. And then the following day, which was the day before she died, a whole bunch of people from Ambercombe who knew her went and found the window of the hospital outside where she was staying. And they sang to her through the window. And the nurses came and opened the windows. And the whole room was flooded with the singing of our people to Fiona, acknowledging her life, acknowledging her. And it crossed my mind, this is perhaps what we once did with chieftains. To a woman or man of standing in our society that we would have gathered, we would have sung to them our hearts and souls and acknowledgement of who they were. I want you to remember, on one level, she was absolutely nothing special. And yet she was utterly special. So her grave is close near a little patch of land that I look after at Ambercombe. And she was buried in a willow casket that was made by one of the guys. And we all knew that at some point the soil in the grave would subside as the willow casket collapses and the soil goes down. And that happened a few days ago with the heavy rain. It went down. I also know that her daughter is coming soon with some members of the family. And I didn't want them to come and feel somehow bad or be jarred by the physical sight of the collapse of the soil and any sense of what's all making something that's already difficult more difficult. So I notified Fee's sister and I said, would you like me to top up the grave and she said yes. So that's what I was doing yesterday. And all the time in my mind I'm just thinking, this is a person who would have placed herself last on every list. This is a person who felt she had nothing to give in the early days and was ultimately revealed to be someone with an enormous gift to give. And that's, if only I could speak to each one of you individually, that's what I would be saying. I'd be saying what my Indigenous teachers said to me, that when a baby is born, a baby is in her mother's womb, creation whispers to the unborn child, I'm going to put a tiny little piece of my genius deep inside your gut. When you are born, you will have no memory of this. But your task is to locate your gift, grow it to fullness, and then share it powerfully forever. Now, even if you feel, well, that's all very well, Matt, you've no evidence to support that, it's just a story and all the rest of it, I understand. It's the same for me. But it seems to me like a good hypothesis to work on. Why not live a life like that? I have a piece to give, and it's mine to give, no one else's. I will nurture it, I will locate it. That may take some time. I will nurture it, I will feed it, I will allow it to grow, I'll bring it to fullness. And I will keep meeting my fear, and I will share it. And I'll take a look at the friends, the company I keep, and ask myself, is this serving me? Do these friends wish me to be powerful and impactful in the world? Or is there an unwritten story that they don't want me to flourish in case it made them look a little less? It's almost like a story in many families. We all stay at this level, it's an unspoken agreement. The company we keep is very important. the company that we keep should be always inviting us to step to the fullness of who we are. And applauding us when we do so. So I wanted to share with you this story. It's one that happened, well, what is it now? It is about 18 years ago, I suppose. But I was living on Anglesey, which used to be the Isle of Mona in Britain, sort of spiritual epicenter of Britain at that time, 2,000 years ago. I was living on the Isle of Anglesey, and my Native American friends were visiting, and they were working with me and a couple of others. And they decided they wanted to go to the River Avon to pray, because they wanted to go to the rivers of these lands, which you would see really as the arteries and veins of our land. They would go to that place to pray. So they went. So I was given the task of staying back at base and cooking dinner and getting things ready for when they arrived back, which I was happy to do. When they came back with this story. One of them relayed to me. So we came to the River Avon, and we found this little place where tourists could hire a boat and take a seat in the boat, and the boat would go chugging up the River Avon. And they'd receive some commentary around the Avon and around the river and the banks and the surrounding land. And so they paid their money and got on the boat. They were an unlikely little crew. One of them was a huge, very large person with cataracts, like white eyes, almost blind. A few others, but they stood out in any crowd. Anyway, they took their seats. So the engine starts on the boat, and it starts chugging up the Avon. And this rather weary-looking guy of an age similar to mine, looking like he'd been doing this for 100 years and hated every second of it, sort of started up. He said, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's very nice to have you all here. Welcome, welcome to my boat." So on the left, we have a 2,000-acre estate, which is owned by the Duke of Westminster, last valued at something in the region of X millions of pounds. And keeps going. On the right, you'll see the very large sort of Gothic building over there, whatever. Then Sting bought that 5 years ago. The property is currently valued at this much. There are rumours he's going to build a new wing, and that new wing is going to cost this many millions. And Rod Stewart, and he's going on now. And suddenly this voice calls out from the back of the boat, "Riverman, Riverman, I can see inside your heart. Why are you speaking about all this bullshit about who owns this land and how many millions? Why don't you speak about what's in your heart? Why don't you speak about the river?" And this guy sort of jolts his, hasn't happened, I guess. He says, "Excuse me for the interruption. If you don't mind, I'd like to continue." So coming up round the next bend, we've got with a recent Prime Minister, and he's about to go on again. The voice says, "Riverman! Riverman, speak from your heart. Speak about your love of this river. Why betray yourself speaking about all this bullshit you know is of no value?" So the riverman suddenly says, I recognize that accent. It's our American friends. Strange that they always seem so loud. If you don't mind, American friends, would you mind turning down the volume? And I will continue with an interrupted riverman. I feel the tears behind your eyes. Speak about that which you love. And suddenly, Riverman, the guy's face begins to crack a bit. And suddenly he chokes. And he makes a motion as if to wipe his eyes. And the next moment, he is speaking through his tears. He said, "It's true. I do love this river. I always loved this river. Nobody's interested in the river, but they're very interested in the Duke of Westminster's land and this and that." And the voice spoke again. "Riverman, I'm interested. I'm interested." And he begins to speak about the river. He speaks about how the salmon had begun to return. He spoke about the restoration projects that had happened, about how the river was gradually coming back to life. He spoke about his anguish of how it, at various times when it had gone in the opposite direction. And he started to call it my river, my land, this place of which I take responsibility. And by the time that river journey had finished, and everybody left, and all the tourists had lifted their heads from looking at their feet, so embarrassed had they been by this whole thing, but slowly rising them as it began to get shift and change. Lots of handshaking, some hugging, people disappear. This is our story, you see. This is our land, our mountains, our stream. I don't, of course, mean this in some kind of possessive ownership way. I mean the love for this extraordinarily beautiful place that we've been born. Whatever ugliness is in it is not its natural state, it's what we've layered on top. It is beautiful. And beauty needs to be seen. And its beauty needs to be spoken of. And it's us who will do that. So whether it's Wait the Tiger, and I'm going to be bringing my family to you soon. I've asked Lack, is it okay for a 5-year-old? He says it is. So I'm not sure about my 5-year-old, but we'll find out anyway. So we're going to come. And we'll look forward to it. And that experience will touch us. And that little boy, I look into his eyes as he's 5. What does he wish to see from me? I think he wants to believe that it's possible for a just, peaceful, and beautiful world. He needs to know that he can trust his rather elderly dad. He needs to feel that he is seen, respected, validated, and that I have no desire that he should do exactly what I've done, but only he should be himself. Yesterday he always wakes me up in the morning and we go downstairs. And he said, "Dada, I've had a dream." I said, "Oh, what was your dream?" He said, "I was with Mama and we were walking to Embercombe, but we got lost and couldn't find the way. And he said, I asked this man directions. I did, Dada, I did the asking. I spoke to him and told him and asked him the way to Embercombe. And he said, it's behind those trees. So I led Mama through the trees and we got to Embercombe and we found your cabin. It was empty and cobwebs everywhere." And I said, what did you feel about this dream, Kai? He said, I felt very proud of myself, that I asked this man myself and found the way there, but the cabin was empty with cobwebs. I said, "What did you do?" He said, "I don't know, the dream stopped." I said, "What would you do now?" He said, "I guess I'd clean it up and brush out the cobwebs." I said, "Light the fire?" He said, "Yeah, light the fire and maybe do some things." I don't know whether it hit him. Of course, it occurred to me that in his dream he was somehow seeing the cabin after I'd joined Fiona, buried in the field. That little guy needs to know that his life matters. All those people that pitch up at Boomtown, the story you offer them is hugely important. I would say it matters a good deal less whether they listen or take any notice. I really would. Because that's their choice. None of us actually can do much more than attempt to take leadership of this life. We do have effect and impact on others, and sometimes for some people it's more than for others. But the real place where we have leverage is here, this person. So if you, with Wake the Tiger and with Boomtown, do everything in your power to offer a story that help people see that this Hay tour, the tour that I was on, that they have come together not only for a festival. What is a festival? A gathering where we come together and love the fact that we've come together, where difference can be celebrated and everything, but we are all part of one circle, and where the storyline is that our choices will decide the next chapter of this human story. They may or may not follow your lead. That is their choice. You only need to know that you stood by what you feel in your heart, and you stood strong, and the rest is up to whatever, up to destiny, up to story, up to whatever it is. And that's it. So what when things go wrong? What when disaster happens? And I really hope I didn't share this experience with you last time. What happens when things really go badly wrong? So I'm going to share this. I fear a little bit how it portrays me, but I think I probably need to share it with you. In the early days of Embacombe, we had a lot of people coming, and they needed somewhere to go to the toilet. And in the very early days, and I am apologizing for this, but all we used to do is we'd dig a hole in the ground, about 1 meter square, and about 1.5 meters deep. And then we put a little shed on it with a toilet seat, and that's where people would do their business. And when the hole filled up, we would remove the shed, we'd soil over the top, and we'd leave it. I don't believe it's a very ecologically sound way of going on about things, but that's what we did. And I was the one who used to dig the holes. Okay? And I really enjoyed this task. I always have, from being tiny, really enjoyed digging holes. I know it sounds rather simple-minded, but I do actually love it. I'm not so good as I used to be, but I used to be able to dig fast and dig well, and I was proud of my holes. They're either circular or square, and then very steep vertical sides and a flat bottom, and aesthetically extremely pleasing. It's like standing in front of the hole that I dug and say, wow, it's a very good hole. And then people would come along and they plant the shed on top with the toilet seat and that. And then people would come. Well, this summer, loads and loads and loads of people came. And the hole filled up pretty fast. And it was also a very, very hot summer. So I don't want to disturb you too much, but if you can imagine, it was sort of cooking. In fact, it seemed to come to life in its own. It was sort of bubbling and making odd, strange noises. It was heaving in a kind of way. So noticing that it was almost full up, because I wasn't in those days consigned to sitting in front of a computer. I was actively doing stuff. And I said, we need to move this shed. I've dug another hole. We need to move the shed over there, put it on the new hole. Anyway, it's nearly lunchtime, guys. Let's go up and have some lunch and we'll come back and finish off. Could somebody throw something over the top of this shithole so that nobody has an accident? So somebody heaved a few sheets of corrugated iron over the top and we all went up for lunch. Now, I don't know really quite what happened. And I suspect it has something to do with my advancing years and perhaps with the little area in my brain here, which at a certain point was thought to be a tumour, but in fact isn't. But is certainly like a little bit of loose circuitry or something. I don't know what happened. But I do know that when we came down from dinner, lovely hot day, another hot summer day, we arrived at the place and we were ready to move the shed onto the new hole. There was lots of people around and I suddenly flashed into my mind safety hazard as I looked at these corrugated sheets on the ground. And I mean, honestly, it is inexplicable to me, but I grabbed hold of these sheets to get them out of the way of people, threw them over that way and stepped forward.
Oh my God.
I'd like you to savor this moment. Now, I'm the founder of Embercombe. I have a certain position. Some people, not all by any means, look up to me a little bit. I stand for something. I'm the founder of Embercombe, and I'm going down. It's about that deep. It's 1 metre square. It's full of thousands of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. It has a life of its own. It's bubbling. This thing people say about at the moment of death, you see your whole life flash in front of you. That isn't what happened to me. But I did have a moment of extraordinary clarity. Nothing can save me. And I'm descending. And then something happened, which spiritual seekers, particularly in places like India and Nepal, have studied years to master this. I levitated out of the hole. I sort of shot vertically upwards and landed on the side, covered in shit. Covered in shit. It's one of the worst things, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure there are worse things, but I doubt there's a single person in this room would say, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind that. It's a horrible, horrible thing, covered in shit. As I come up, I look around and there's a circle of all my people, on their faces, horror. Absolute horror. But I saw something else. I saw that they desperately wanted to laugh. All this happened so fast. And I also knew this is a defining moment in my leadership. How I react. And I felt like screaming. Honestly, I felt like screaming. It was the worst I could have imagined. But as I saw all this, I was tearing my clothes off. Felt absolutely just tearing them all off. And I knew what I had to do. Standing there naked, dripping in shit, I picked up, because they were helpless on the floor. They were all just collapsed in hysterics all around me. So I began to laugh as well. I picked up these clothes and whirling them about my head, I chased after them as fast as I could. And suddenly their laughter turned to absolute terror and horror. And they scatter all over the place. And the last I'm seen is running naked across the fields, back down to the house where I remained in the shower for most of the remaining hours of the day. It really happened. It's not made up. I don't think I've embellished that story at all. It's exactly as it was. I think that's how it is, you see. When the worst thing happens, whatever that worst thing is, we mustn't forget we have a choice. We always have a choice. And that choice is not whether something happens or not, it's how we respond to what happens. That's really key to my mind. And in that moment, I actually saw the opportunity that was there. Enormous relief through my people that I laughed. It would have been profoundly embarrassing and also disconcerting and all sorts of awful things if they'd just see me lying on the floor sobbing. Yes. Or, engulfed in self-pity or anything. It was funny. I knew it was funny. I had some difficulty in really feeling the humor of it at first. But it was funny. And if it had been anybody else, I would have been with them having hysterics. But I also knew the only thing to do in a situation like that is just take it for what it is and, have fun. And that's what I did. If should it ever happen again, and I pray it doesn't, then maybe I won't respond in that same way. But I would offer to you, really need to know this. Fiona's death is now a wave upon which many people are becoming inspired. My falling in that toilet became a story actually that was much more than just the horror of falling in that. All these things that are going to happen are always invitations to us which just ask us who we are and what we stand for, and whether what we speak will be witnessed in the way we live our lives. So I'm going to close in a moment now, and just to say, last night I was on a Zoom call. We had people from Australia, from New Zealand, from North America, from India, from Africa, with these different people. And I was on a little panel with Apache woman elder and one other. And we were being asked questions about our daily practice. What daily practices would we recommend or suggest that others might like to consider? And different things were spoken, but for me, I spoke of I've tried meditating. In fact, I have, over a period of years, meditated every day. I've tried many different things. But where I've landed is that I realize that actually what makes most sense to me is somehow making all the tiny, small, normal, ordinary parts of my day an expression of my love for this life, this earth, her people, and the privilege I feel to be alive at this time. So I feed the cat. I'm glad to be giving this little creature their food. When I make my little boy, his favourite at the moment is a pancake with some what do you call it? Can't remember the name anyway, something sweet on it and strawberries, wrapped up in a particular way and cut into sections. I love doing it for him. When my family depart, I have been taking him to school, but now that my wife's feeling better because she's been unwell this last year, she's taking him. So I will buckle him into his car seat, give him a hug, give him a kiss, come round. One dear will wind down her window, I lean in, I embrace her. I wave them goodbye. This is a very ordinary thing that many people do, but for me, I can't do it enough. I want it to soak in. I am so grateful to have these people in my life. I'm so grateful for the silliness and the noisiness, the messiness of our house. I'm so grateful for the warmth and companionship and sense of family. When I go to Embercombe, my first action is to feed the birds outside my cabin. I'm so grateful to those little creatures for bringing me their song, bringing me their colour, bringing me their gentle beauty. You understand? The small act of giving food is a gesture of gratitude, but I am the beneficiary. Truly, it looks like I'm giving something, but I am the beneficiary. Because these little birds, they trust me, and they come cluster all around me, and the robin comes and feeds from my hand. And I am so grateful that this creature feels that it can trust me enough to do that. So some of us may choose to meditate, some of us may choose to do our yoga practice, some of us may choose to do all kinds of things. And that's fine if we do. But for those of us that don't, first morning, making of a cup of tea, the looking out through the window, the reminding ourselves of who we are and the work that we're engaged on, the feeding of our birds, the tending of our gardens or our pot plant, whatever it happens to be. The first words we speak when we meet colleagues when we arrive. Everything that is good about the future is made up of small acts of kindness, exchanged between people, that collectively make something truly wonderful. So at the beginning of your year, the beginning of this whole journey for Boomtown folk, at this time when Wake the Tiger, and I hope it just spreads and grows and becomes something that people flock to, I think it would be really wonderful if you remind yourself, this is my business. This is my city. This is my land, our land. I am alive at this time because I need to be alive at this time. I am a person worthy of some account, and I will demonstrate that in the way I live my life. And irrespective of how the story eventually works out, I will bequeath myself the knowledge that this life mattered, that this life counted, and in every way along that road I sought to heal the wounds that I have and bring forward the gifts that I have, so that I can feel that I did truly live while I was alive. Thank you.